The White Tiger opens with a voice that is confident, sly, and impossible to ignore. Writing from Bangalore over a series of nights, Balram Halwai introduces himself as a successful entrepreneur, a man who has risen from nothing, and he promises to tell the true story of modern India, not from the viewpoint of ministers and billionaires, but from the underside, where servants watch everything. Balram is born in Laxmangar, a village deep in what he calls the darkness, the impoverished India of mud, debt, hunger, and inherited submission. His family is crushed by landlords, by caste expectations, and by the simple fact that poverty in his world is not a temporary hardship but a life sentence passed from one generation to the next. Even as a child, though, Balram seems different. At school, a visiting inspector notices the brightness in him and calls him a white tiger, a creature that appears only once in a generation, and for a brief moment that name feels like a prophecy, as though the boy might really be rare enough to escape the life waiting for him. But the world closes over that hope almost immediately. Balram is pulled out of school and sent to work in a tea shop, where he crushes coal, wipes tables, and serves men who barely see him. There, still a child, he begins to understand one of the book's harshest truths: intelligence means very little when the machinery of society is designed to waste it. From the tea shop, Balram watches drivers with fascination. They move between worlds, carrying the rich from one place to another, overhearing secrets, learning the habits of power, and touching a life that remains forbidden to everyone else below them. To Balram, driving looks like more than a job, it looks like the first crack in the wall. At home, his father becomes the clearest image of what happens to good men in the darkness. He is a rickshaw puller who has spent his entire life straining for others, a man with pride but no protection, and when illness overtakes him, the family drags him to a government hospital so corrupt and indifferent that death seems less like tragedy than policy. The father dies as he lived, exhausted, unhelped, and discarded by the system that fed on his labor. Balram never forgets it. He learns that in his world honesty is not rewarded, patience is not noble, and suffering does not redeem anyone. It merely proves that the poor can be made to endure almost anything. So Balram decides he must become a driver. He learns the trade, flatters the right people, studies engines and behavior alike, and slowly turns himself into someone useful to the rich. What he is really learning, though, is not just how to drive a car but how to read the people seated in the back of it. His chance comes when he enters the household of the stork, one of the landlords who dominate Laxmangar. In serving this family, Balram steps closer to wealth than he has ever been before, yet that closeness only sharpens the humiliation of his position. He can enter their gates, but only by lowering his eyes. The most important figure in the household is Ashok, the stork's younger son, recently returned from America with his wife, Pinky Madam. Compared with the older generation, Ashok seems gentler, less brutal, even almost decent, and Balram, hungry for some sign that the world might contain a humane master, is drawn to him at once. When Ashok and Pinky take Balram with them to Delhi, the novel opens outward into a vast urban spectacle of wealth and decay. Balram sees malls, glass towers, traffic, slums, luxury apartments, beggars at intersections, and politicians moving through a nation that speaks of progress while resting on millions of invisible workers. In Delhi, Balram begins to understand the deeper logic of servitude. He studies other chauffeurs, cooks, guards, and maids, and he realizes that the poor are trapped not only by hunger but by fear, fear for their families, fear of punishment, fear so internalized that most never dare to imagine escape. This is what he calls the Rooster Co-op. Balram lives inside that coop every day. He waits outside shopping centers for hours, sleeps where he is told, lies when necessary, and absorbs insult after insult with a bowed head. Yet behind that obedience, his mind is always working, collecting weaknesses, hypocrisies, and clues about how the rich protect themselves. The turning point comes one drunken night when Pinky Madam takes the wheel and kills a child in a hit-and-run. The panic that follows strips away every illusion Balram still has. To save themselves, Ashok's family pressures Balram into signing a confession for a crime he did not commit, expecting him to accept prison as just another duty of service. In that moment, Balram sees his place with unbearable clarity. No matter how loyal he is, no matter how attentively he serves, his life has no value to the people above him except as a shield for their comfort. He is not a person in their eyes. He is disposable. Soon after, Pinky Madam leaves Ashok and returns to America, unable to bear the life she has entered or the guilt that clings to it. Her departure leaves Ashok adrift, lonely, guilty, self-pitying, and Balram finds himself closer than ever to his master, not as an equal, but as the silent witness to his weakness. That closeness becomes its own education. Balram watches Ashok carry bags of cash to politicians, listens as he complains about corruption even while participating in it, and sees him drift through Delhi's nights of drinking and prostitution. The revelation is devastating. The modern, educated man is not separate from the old rot. He is merely its softer-spoken heir. At the same time, another idea begins to grow in Balram's mind. In Delhi and later in Bangalore, he senses a new India coming into being, one of outsourcing, call centers, startups, and restless ambition, and he becomes obsessed with the thought that a clever man might be able to seize a place in it, even if no honest road leads there. But to claim such a life, Balram realizes, he will have to do more than dream. So long as he remains obedient, so long as he keeps thinking like a servant, and fearing like a son, he will stay locked in the coop forever. Escape, he decides, will require an act so violent that it breaks the whole structure of his old life. That act comes when Ashok rides alone with Balram carrying a red bag full of bribe money. In a scene both shocking and coldly inevitable, Balram murders him and steals the cash. It is the novel's great rupture. The servant kills the master, not in sudden madness, but as a deliberate bid to be reborn. Balram knows exactly what this choice means. In a society built on retaliation, he understands that his family back in Laxmangar will almost certainly pay the price for what he has done, and the horror of that knowledge never fully leaves the story. His freedom is real, but it is purchased with blood, and not only Ashok's. He flees to Bangalore, reinvents himself as Ashok Sharma, and uses the stolen money to build a taxi business serving the city's booming outsourcing economy. Here, among call centers and night shifts and rising glass buildings, Balram finally enters the India that rewards speed, cunning, and nerve, the India he has long been watching from below. He succeeds. He bribes police, manages drivers, courts clients, and becomes exactly the kind of man who once seemed unreachable to him. Yet the triumph is never simple, because Balram's ascent reveals the novel's darkest insight. In a corrupt world, escape often means learning to wield the same corruption more skillfully than those who once wielded it against you. And still, Balram insists that he is not entirely the same as the men he replaced. When one of his own drivers kills a child in an accident, he does not force an innocent servant to confess. Instead, he pays compensation to the family and takes the loss himself. It is not innocence, and it is not justice, but it is his uneasy attempt to imagine a less monstrous form of power. By the end, Balram stands as one of modern fiction's most unsettling narrators, funny, ruthless, perceptive, self-justifying, and often devastatingly honest. The White Tiger endures because it refuses to give us a clean hero or a comforting moral. It tells a gripping rise-to-power story, then asks the question that lingers long after the last page. In a world built on exploitation, what kind of man do you have to become to be free? If you learned something, consider giving this video a like, subscribe to see more. We hope to see you in the next video.